I wasn't going to do a video at this bit, but why not? So yeah, so this is the first curiosity of the walk. This is not one of the main three that I'm actually going for. The land I'm standing on now is Biggleswade Common, which is notable for several reasons. Firstly, it's common ground, which is quite rare these days. You get it in a few other places as well, but it's relatively rare as land ownership structures go. Secondly, this is the oldest bit of common ground in Bedfordshire. This is about 12,000 AD, this first appears. It's also the biggest, it's about 300 acres. And even to this day, there are 108 common rights associated with it. I'm walking across them, that is one. I'm also dodging plenty of cowpats, that's the consequence of one of the others. It's not my doing, I hasten to add. But yes, it's an old remnant of the medieval manorial system, where this sort of common ground was a lot more common. Yes, medieval manorial system. Keep that in your mind, it may come back in later today. So, another little curiosity. The road I'm walking along now, this track that you can see behind me, follows the track of a Roman road that ran from the south, towards London, up to Duro Vigatum, which is what we now call Godmanchester, where there was a Roman garrison. This area was quite popular with the Romans. There was a lot of farming went on around here. It was not entirely secure. Whenever there were revolts and things, it would often be occupied. The local tribe, the Briton tribe around here was called the Catu Vallani. And in fact, I've just walked past a bush, so you won't be able to see what I'm about to refer to. The farmsteads at this end of the track were defended by two Roman forts. One of them was on top of the hill you can see over there. That was called Caesar's Fort, or the Caesar's Fort in the classical Latin. The other is over there behind this hedge at Galley Hill. I may well stop off at one of them on the way back because it is sort of on my route, and you can actually see some of the original fortifications. They were built on old Iron Age forts. So yes, so another historical curiosity. Obviously this hedge wouldn't have been here back then. That would have been somewhat deleterious to stopping you being ambushed by rampaging ancient Britons. But yes, so may well stop off on the way there. So here I am in another field. You know I like a field. This is in fact a special field. This was once RAF Tempsford during the war, and then a little bit afterwards, up until about 1966, I think. RAF Tempsford was a very special RAF base in that it was primarily used to support the Special Operations Executive, the band of geniuses who gave us such cracking inventions as giving our secret agents, who we dropped into France, chocolate laced with garlic, so that if the Germans caught them and smelt their breath, they thought they were French. They might have been slightly mad, but they did do an absolutely fantastic job during the war. So they flew their agents into and out of Allied Europe from here, occupied Europe rather. They started off, initially it was actually Wellingtons that they flew out of here. That was, and then that unit left, and then the SOE took over, and then it moved on to Whitleys and Lysanders primarily, and then towards the end of the war, the Halifax came in and replaced the Whitleys, which by that point were a little bit aged. It also flew very briefly 3 B-24 Liberators, American planes. From here they were flown by Polish aviators to support the Polish resistance. They dropped supplies in. The airfield eventually closed down for flying in June 1945. The last flights went out, but it carried on a little bit as an RAF maintenance base for a while after that. I do actually have written down, so I don't forget, the rough approximation of what was flown out of here over the course of the war. So by the end of the war, 29,000 containers of supplies, 10,000 packages, and 995 agents were flown into Europe, and a similar number flown back out again to land here. And over the course of that, they lost about 70 aircraft, mostly with all of their crews. So yes, historical curiosity of the walk number, what's this, 3, I think. Yes. So unfortunately, curiosity number, what's this, 4 I think, is locked off behind this gate and fence. I thought I could get to it, but I can't. I'm rather annoyed as well because this gate says it's locked off because it's in constant use. Well, I've been here 3 minutes and nobody's come along yet, so I'm going to contest that for a start. But anyway, over there, behind the tree line, is a medieval moated enclosure. This is a place called Big in Wood. So this was a house with a moat. It was built in about the 13th century and was pretty much continually inhabited, it's believed, until about the 15th, although by the end of that it was quite derelict. It has a nice, it's, as I say, it's got a moat, it's got some earthworks. The moat's around 9 metres across, about 1.5 metres down, so obviously not a lot of people could swim back then. It's also got a few curiosities to it, this house. While they were excavating it back in the 90s, they found three bodies, 3 human bodies that they reckon, about either the 13th century or the 15th. Definitely not the 14th was the conclusion. But it's quite unusual because this is not consecrated ground, and back then you were expected to be buried in consecrated ground. So you've got 3 mysterious bodies that nobody really knows what they were doing there for. The house itself was quite big. It had a big central hall. It had the remnants of sort of kilns and furnaces, a couple of them in it. It had some central hearths and a big sort of oven stove range at the end of one of the halls. And there was also a little service wing. So, obviously back then, if you were reasonably well-to-do, you'd expect to have servants. So, yes, this was curiosity number 4. But mostly the thing that's curious is that the gate says it's in constant use, and well, I can't constantly use it or even momentarily use it, so sod that for a lark. So here we are, destination. This is Tempsford. This is Gannock's Castle in Tempsford, which is where I've been coming to. Gannock's Castle is a medieval moated house, not dissimilar from the last one we discussed but couldn't see. You can see the remnants of the moat here in this ditch. The bridge obviously is not an original. Now, Gannock's Castle is built on the site of an older archaeological feature, the Burg at Tempsford, which was built by the Danes as they retreated. Now, we have a record of this in this book here, the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you a little bit of context, and in the second part, what I'm going to do is I'm going to read you the section from the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle, which discusses the Battle at Tempsford and the destruction of the Burg here, which would then be built on later as Gannock's Castle. So the context is 878, Alfred the Great beats Guthrun, the king or the leader of the Great North Army, the Great Heathen Army that's been ravaging England for a few years. And he decisively defeats them at Edington in Wiltshire. Now, Edington is probably the most famous, most important battle in English history that nobody's ever heard of, because it is the battle which I think probably decisively says that England is going to be English, is going to be Anglo-Saxon rather, and not Norse or not Danish of descent. But the defeat at Edington doesn't completely put off the Norse. It pushes them back into what we now know as the Danelaw. But they keep raiding, and this area where I am now is one of the sort of border zones. This is where they keep raiding, and Tempsford here in 917 is the site of the Battle of Tempsford, where that is challenged. So I'm going to read you now the description of the only source we have for the Battle of Tempsford. So, the Battle of Tempsford in the Anglo-Saxon Chronicle. The raiding army went from Huntingdon and from East Anglia, and made that fortress at Tempsford, and lived in it, and constructed it, and abandoned the other at Huntingdon, and thought that from there they would reach more of the land again with war and with hostility. And went so that they got at Bedford, and the men who were inside there went out to meet them, and fought against them, and put them to flight, and killed a good part of them. Then yet again after that, a great raiding army gathered from East Anglia, and from the land of Mercia, and went to the stronghold at Wingingamere, and besieged it, and fought long into the day, and seized the cattle round about. Nevertheless, the men who were inside there defended the stronghold, and then they, the Danes, left the stronghold and went away. Then after that, the same summer, a great tribe gathered together in King Edward's domain from the nearest strongholds who could travel to it, and went to Tempsford, and besieged the stronghold, and fought against it, until they broke it down, and killed the king Guthrum II and Jarl Toglos and his son Jarl Munna and his brother and all who were inside there and wished to defend themselves, and seized the others and all that was inside there. So that is the only record we have of the Battle of Tempsford. Now, we don't know much about Guthrum. This is not the same Guthrum that Alfred defeated at Eddington. This is Guthrum II. We don't really know what his relation was. We don't know much about Jarl Toglos or Jarl Munna as well. We don't know about them. So this is the only record we have of the battle that was fought here. I don't know whether it was fought in this field. I'm just pointing at it because it's a nice field. So yes, so that is why I have come all this way, is to look at the site of probably the burg here that is now Gannick's Castle, that was fought over in 917 by King Edward the Elder, the eldest son of Alfred the Great, and the Danes. And that was the adventure today. Thank you.